Are we yet witnessing another dangerous deja vu? From Iraq to Libya, from Afghanistan to Iran, a drumbeat of war echoes once again. Familiar, haunting, and alarmingly scary. But this time it comes with a twist. The US president openly rejecting the warning of his own intelligence chief and echoing the same playbook that has led the world into chaos time and again.
But how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
That's Donald Trump defying the US intelligence community's own assessment, defying the Director of National Intelligence, and defying the very warning she himself gave just a few years ago. In 2019, Trump declared that America's Middle East war were the worst decision ever made. Tonight, she may be preparing to make it again. So we ask, how does a man who once vowed to drain the swamp find himself wading knee deep into it once again? How does a nation bruised by failed interventions find itself standing on the edge of yet another conflict? And most importantly, what does this mean for the world and for Africa? Because history has taught us that when America sneezes in the Middle East, Africa catches cold. This is not just about bombs and politics. This is about destabilized regions, weaponized refugees, inflated oil prices, and widening inequality. Real consequences that land hardest on the global south. So tonight we unpack the pattern, we expose the players, and we ask the question, is this ignorance, incompetence, or something far more deliberate? I am Ibrahim Umar Wase. This is Connecting the Dots. Once again, the morning sun rises over a world teetering on the edge. Volatile, wounded, and morally bankrupt. The cries of babies echoes through the silence. Babies whose parents' lives were cut short in senseless violence. The wails of women suddenly widowed piece the consciousness of a world that seemed to have lost its way. And so the question looms large. What is the fate of our mother planet Earth? It is no longer a matter of if, but when. For in a world where the laws of might have replaced the rights of justice, a threat of nuclear war does not just whisper fear, it roars with the promise of catastrophe. And if that day comes, it will not just be a political crisis, but a death sentence for humanity itself. So tonight our story begins with the contradictions that once again laid bare at the heart of US foreign policy. Just a month ago, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, assured Congress that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
But earlier today, President Donald J. Trump made it clear he doesn't believe her.
But how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
That single statement sent shockwaves not only across diplomatic channels, but within the American intelligence community itself. It raises a chilling question. Is the US government openly at war with its own intelligence infrastructure? Remember, this is the same Trump who back in 2016 campaigned on draining the so-called deep states. Tonight, critics argue it is not only alive and well, but stronger than ever. But here is the thing. When the United States flip with military escalation, especially in the Middle East. The whole world listens, not because of admiration, because the historical consequences have never remained confined to the battlefield. Let's begin with the core issues. America's track records in regime change. From Iraq in 2003 to Libya in 2011 and Afghanistan in 2001 to 2021. The US has repeatedly justified invasions in the name of fighting terrorism, protecting democracy, and stopping weapons of mass destruction. But in every case, what follows was chaos, collapse, and regional instability. Have you noticed the pattern? Again and again, these conflicts are triggered by one loud voice, Israel, and more specifically, Benjamin Netanyahu, a long-serving Israeli prime minister.
If you take away the Soviet Union and its chief proxy, the PLO, international terrorism would collapse.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. Obviously, we like to see a regime change, at least I would, in Iran, just as I would like to see in Iraq. The question now is a practical question. What is the best place to proceed? It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? It's not a question of whether you'd like to see a regime change in Iran, but how do it...
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The answer is categorically yes. The two nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran. But a third nation, by the way, is Libya as well. Libya is trying very rapidly to build an atomic bomb capability. So you have here now three nations.
All stand together to stop Iran's march of conquest, subjugation, and terror. I know that no matter on which side of the aisle you sit, you stand with Israel.
Behind the smokescreen of diplomacy and self-defense, there is a consistent push to drag the United States into wars that ultimately serve Israel's regional interests, not American global stability and certainly in the world's peace. Let's start with Iraq. It was claimed, certainly first by Benjamin Netanyahu, loudly and confidently that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever. And there is no question that once he acquires it, history shifts immediately.
But the truth, none were found till death. Yet the US went in with full military force. Over 1 million Iraqis died, the state collapsed, and in the end, Iran, not America, emerged stronger. The very country the war was supposed to weaken. Ironic, isn't it? Then Libya. Then came to Libya. With NATO's backing, the US joined forces to remove Muammar Gaddafi. Mission accomplished, right? Lo, disaster unleashed. The nation fractured into chaos. Warlords took over. Open-air slave market appeared in Tripoli, and the floodgates opened. Arms poured into the Sahel, igniting insurgencies from Mali to Nigeria. Boko Haram, ISWAP, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. This didn't just rise, they thrived in the vacuum the US helped create. And that's not all. Libya's collapse transformed it into a launchpad of mass migration, triggering humanitarian crisis and political unrest across Europe and Africa. As war breaks states, Africa pays the price. In refugees, in instability, in blood. And what about oil prices and food security? Each Middle East conflict chokes global supply routes, raises costs, and triggers inflation. The West protects itself with subsidies, but the poor and vulnerable in Africa bear the brunt, paying more for less in economies that never started the fire. Then came Afghanistan, a war sold by the US media as a regime change. 2 decades, trillions spent, thousands dead. And guess what? The Taliban came back stronger than ever. Nothing changed except the graveyards bought fuller. So here is the question we must ask boldly and without apology. Is Donald Trump unaware of this history, or is he deliberately turning a blind eye? Back in 2019, Donald Trump himself tweeted, clear as daylight, the United States has spent $8 trillion fighting and policing in the Middle East. He said, thousands of our great soldiers have died or been badly wounded. He added, millions of people have died on the other side. Going to the Middle East is the worst decision ever made, according to Donald Trump. Some believe he should have not been the person to make similar mistake. But that's Trump for you, highly unpredictable. But that goes beyond ignorance or unpredictability. As a matter of fact, Trump had been a loudest critic of Obama's administration as far back as 2013 on the US Middle East policy. This was also written by Trump, the date 11/11/2013. He said, remember that I predicted a long time ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly, not skill. Symbolic, right? As the date coincide with the 11 September 2001 attack by Al-Qaeda, by people, this isn't just ignorance anymore. It is a replay of a deadly, expensive, and predictable script. One written in Washington, directed by Tel Aviv, and paid by the rest of the world. Majority of Trump voters oppose U.S. involvement in Israel-Iran war. Polls now show that most Trump voters do not support U.S. involvement in a potential war with Iran. In fact, across the line, a staggering 53%, the American public is increasingly favoring diplomacy over military action.
Take out the mullahs, knock them out. You got John Bolton, who's getting a little excited. Let me translate for you right now. He writes in the Wall Street Journal, and you guys know I'm pro-Israel. I don't think I need to prove that any further. I have the scars to prove that I'm pro-Israel from all the campus events. Iran's ayatollahs are weaker than ever. Let me tell you what John Bolton is really saying here. He's basically saying that we should go for the throat and we need to execute regime change. That is what John Bolton is saying in neocon speak, in so many words. But did you know that we only have a problem in Iran at the scale and the magnitude that we currently have because we involved ourselves in regime change?
That's Tucker Carlson, one of Trump's most loyal allies and most influential voice on American right, issuing a sharp and clear warning. War with Iran is not just dangerous, it is potentially catastrophic. But in trademark fashion, Donald Trump has fired back on Truth Social, writing, "Somebody please explain to Cookie Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons." Donald Trump, speaking about Air Force One after abruptly departing Calgary a day ahead of schedule, delivered a stunning remark. The rhetoric is no longer just heated, it is explosive. He has taken to Truth Social with a series of posts that are raising red flags around the world. Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and waste of human life. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, he re-emphasized. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. In that single post, Trump isn't just urging diplomacy, he is signaling the possibility of military escalation. His call for evacuation of Tehran echoes like a warning siren. Then came a second, even more chilling message: unconditional surrender. We now have complete and total control of the skies over Tehran, he added. These words, unconditional surrender, are not the language of peace. That's war talk. That's regime change rhetoric. And it is raising alarm bells across intelligence cycles. When you use phrases like control of skies and unconditional surrender, you are not just posturing, you are setting the stage for preemptive strikes or justifying them after the fact. And Iran? It is not sitting idly by. Sources confirm that Tehran has begun missile preparations targeting US military bases across the Middle East in the event of direct American intervention. What we are seeing is a dangerous unraveling fast. And now that the US president is acting more like a spokesperson for Israeli hardliners than an American statesman, is a clear indication that an already volatile region is now on a brink of ignition and the world holding its breath. The big question now is Trump simply bluffing, or are we witnessing a man laying the groundwork for a war from sideline with global consequences? Because history tells us when Washington tops tough, missile fools, and Africa, the Middle East, and global South always pay the heavy price. President Trump claimed he wants an end to the conflict, not a ceasefire, after he accused the French President Emmanuel Macron of mistakenly saying that he left G7 summit in Canada to go back to DC to work on a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. But pause a bit, let's rewind the clock. Trump in 2015 fiercely opposed the neocon agenda, condemning the Iraq war and the lies about weapons of mass destruction.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake. George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East. They lied. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none.
That's Donald Trump in 2015. So what changed? Who lied? Let me show you he lied.
It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? I think the choice of Iraq is a good choice. It's the right choice. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
And even George W. Bush fell to that lie at that time.
Saddam Hussein is harboring terrorists and the instruments of terror, the instruments of mass death and destruction, and he cannot be trusted. The evidence indicates that Iraq is reconstituting its nuclear weapons program. If the Iraqi regime is able to produce, buy, or steal an amount of highly enriched uranium a little larger than a single softball, it could have a nuclear weapon in less than a year.
History offers context. If America goes down the regime change road in Iran, it won't be the first time. In the 1950s, the CIA orchestrated a coup that overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. Why? He nationalized oil. The US and the UK didn't like that. Then they replaced him with the Shah's monarchy regime. The Shah, pro-Western and secular, served US and Western interests. But what followed was decades of anti-American resentment that helped fuel the 1979 Islamic Revolution. And the pattern repeats. Saddam Hussein was top-rate. The result, a forever war, the rise of ISIS, and a stronger Iran. The Taliban were removed after 2 decades and trillions spent with thousands of lives lost. They are back once again in power, stronger than ever. And in Libya, failed states, open-air slave market in Tripoli, and a worsening European migration crisis. The lessons, these wars really go to plan. And the cost, human, moral, strategic, is staggering. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard has now issued what some are calling a nuclear warning. She described the looming threat as an incoming nuclear holocaust, urging Americans to reject the path to escalation.
I recently visited Hiroshima in Japan and stood at the epicenter of a city that remains scarred by the unimaginable horror caused by a single nuclear bomb dropped in 1945, 80 years ago. It's hard for me to find the words to express what I saw, the stories that I heard, the haunting sadness that still remains. This is an experience that will stay with me forever. Yet this one bomb that caused so much destruction on Hiroshima was tiny compared to today's nuclear bombs. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of just 15 kilotons of TNT, whereas today's nuclear warheads range in size from 100 kilotons to over 1 megaton. A single nuclear weapon today could kill millions in just minutes. Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core. This is the reality of what's at stake, what we are facing now. Because as we stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before, political elite and warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers. We must reject this path to nuclear war and work toward a world where no one has to live in fear of a nuclear holocaust.
Is this just rhetoric, or is she signaling something far more ominous from inside the intelligence community? In Washington, Congressman Matt Gaetz delivered a stark reminder. The last time America listened to Benjamin Netanyahu's false weapon of mass destruction plea, we poured blood and treasures into Iraq and made Iran stronger.
The regime change war in Iraq cost our great nation treasure, credibility, and the blood of our bravest patriots. It resulted in broken limbs, broken families, and broken minds. It also resulted in a broken Iraq, which ironically has now become a vassal state of, wait for it, Iran. That's right. For those keeping track at home, the last time America listened to Netanyahu based on false claims of weapons of mass destruction, we ended up pouring cash and blood all over the sands of Mesopotamia. And in the end, it only made Iran stronger. And now they're trying to get us into war with Iran.
And Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene warns, if the U.S. escalates this conflict, we may see terror attacks right here on our own soil.
Well, the truth is, if we get involved in this war, we are going to see terror attacks right here on our homeland because Biden and the Democrats ripped our border open for the past 4 years. And that's what Americans are talking about. They're sick and tired of it. They want to have happy lives. They don't want to hear about politics. They want to be able to afford food, and they want to be able to afford gas, and they just want to have fun. For once in their life, they want to have fun without Washington telling them they have something to be afraid of.
As tension rises in Middle East, America stands at yet another fork in the road. Will history repeat itself, or will this time the lesson of the past guide the choice of the present? For now, one thing is certain: the stake could not be higher. As the world braces for what may come, one truth stands clear. The past is not just prologue, it is warning. A warning written in blood in Baghdad, whispered through the ruins of Tripoli, buried beneath the rubble of Kunduz, and echoing now towards Tehran. This isn't just another geopolitical mistake. It is the resurrection of a script the world has seen too many times. Authored in Washington, approved in Tel Aviv, but paid for by the powerless across continents. And Africa? Africa is not a bystander. We pay at the pump. We bleed in the Sahel. We carry the human fallout when superpowers plead with fire. So before the missiles fly and speeches are made, before regimes fall and regions collapse, before the world is once again dragged into a war no one voted for. We must ask this simple yet profound question: who benefits from this chaos? And why? After all we have seen, does history keep repeating itself? Because if we don't challenge this cycle now, the next Middle East mistake might just be the world's last. With that, we come to the end of today's episode of Connecting the Dot on Diaspora Digital Media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to get alerted when we drop a new video. This is Connecting the Dot. This is the Voice of New Africa. I remain Ibrahim Numarwase. Let the dots begin to annex. Until next time.